That was beautiful, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation in the Swananoa Valley. Happy May to everyone. It's gorgeous out. The town just looks fantastic, doesn't it? You
Yes.
drive around, see everything blooming, it's beautiful. My name is Peter Howe and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Here on Montreat Road, we are a welcoming congregation standing together on the side of love and justice. We walk through this life with open hearts, open minds, and hope. Let's make the time we spend together today in this place to make us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we set out to come here this morning. If you're new to Unitarian Universalism, you might take note of our mission statement, which is printed on the front of your bulletin. We also work together to promote and practice our 8 principles, which are printed on the back of the Order of Service. On this morning, as we gather here in this place, we need to acknowledge and think about this land where we are now gathered, land that has not always been ours to call home. UUCSB acknowledges with deep respect that the land we are on today is the ancestral home of the Cherokee and of other indigenous people. The Cherokee, through stewardship, understanding, and conservation, survived and thrived in this land. We recognize and should never forget their enduring connection to their homeland and this place. Now you visitors. It's our tradition to welcome first and second time visitors, or those of you who haven't been here in a while, to stand if you're comfortable doing so and introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from. Anybody on this side new visiting for the first or second time?
Yeah.
Hello. Whoa.
We are from the Community Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalist.
Welcome. Great.
I'm Jenny Warnash. Cool. I'm Gail McKinley.
Hi, Gail.
Marion Hirsch. Caroline Sherman.
Caroline, welcome to all four.
We're here for the women's retreat from church for the weekend on trees.
Oh, fantastic. It's a nice place to be. I'm glad you're here this morning.
Thank you.
Anybody else over here? On this side, anybody visiting for the first, second time?
Third time, maybe?
Okay, that works. Tell us about your third time.
Well, we come whenever we're in town. We're from Chicago. I'm Kevin, this is Ellen, and we like what goes on here and feel good.
Oh, inside your back.
Energy here, so, yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, we have a place here in Black Mountain, but we try to get here as often as possible.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, it's great. We just got in last night, so it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Great, well, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this side? Okay, well, welcome everybody. If you want to learn more about us, or you would like to receive our newsletter, or find out how you can be more involved in this community, there's a white card in the back of the pews in front of you for you to fill out and either place in the collection plate or leave on the table in the foyer so that we may get in touch with you. And uusv.org has more good information as well. A couple of announcements this morning. If you haven't completed the survey that you should have gotten an email about, please do so. There are paper copies also in the foyer, or see Marty Saltzman for a link. We would like to hear from you this week if possible. And that's some really important information we're trying to gather about people's preferences and just what's going on in the church as far as everybody else is seeing it besides the Board of Trustees. A reminder about the Canvas Drive. This is Larry's thermometer. This is how we're doing. We're getting towards the end of the time that we need to get these canvases in and promises about your giving intentions for the coming year. There's some of these forms on the table out there that need to be filled out. You can leave them out there, give them to Larry, put them in the connection plate, Larry? Sure. Collection plate? Okay, great. If you could fill those out, that would be really helpful. Also, a reminder of the all-congregation member meeting to discuss updates to the bylaws, which will occur Sunday, May 19th at 12:30. The agenda and support materials will come to you via email early next week. The meeting will also be offered via Zoom link for those who are savvy with attending online meetings and who cannot be on site with us at the church. The link to the meeting will be in your agenda. However, please note that you will not be able to provide technical support. We will not be able to provide technical support, so don't call Michael and say, I can't get logged in, should you have issues with logging onto the meeting. We will require a quorum of members to be present, either in person or virtually, in order for the meeting and in order to conduct the meeting and to hold the votes to accept or reject amended language. So your attendance will be very much appreciated. Larry, you had a couple words to say?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And believe it or not, it's not about money. Some of you may remember Sandy Abramitis, who was in the congregation for several years. I was talking to her the other day. She is in a home in Asheville and can't really get around, so she goes to a church there. But she said, I really miss the UUCSB family, so if you get a chance, please give everybody my love.
Thanks, Larry. With that, we'll begin the service. In case anybody wanted to know, I always thought this was an A. It's not, it's a D.
And in line with our comments about our canvas, we have a member of our Social Action Committee who is here today to speak with us about why UUCSB is important.
My name is Catherine Thorpe. I'm a member of the Social Action Committee for about 6 years now. And when I first signed on to that group, what I was really most impressed by was how many of the people in the group were regular volunteers in all the different agencies that we were researching. And this is a very committed group. Members were involved in Physical Legal, Body and Soul, SVCM, Habitat for Humanity, and many others. And 2 years ago, we facilitated a circle of welcome for an Afghan family who was looking for their new home. And there were at least 20 members of the congregation involved in that, with transportation, all kinds of helping to find houses, bringing them to doctor's appointments. And we're still in touch with them, and they're doing well. Living in Hendersonville now and expecting another baby in July, so we're happy for them. And they're well on the way to citizenship now. They should be getting their green card soon. The Social Action Committee here collaborates with other faiths and other agencies throughout the Swannanoa Valley, including, we've had actions completing Reverend Barber's Poor People's Campaign, the Swannanoa Valley Martin Luther King Board, the Alliance Beyond Land Acknowledgement. We've presented a program on voting rights, and pretty soon, UU The Vote, which is a statewide organization of not only the UU Church here, but several different agencies, will be starting our Get Out the Vote campaign, UU The Vote, and that will be kicking off really soon, so keep your eyes open for word on that. And being in this committee is just a very good way, I think, of using your skills and your abilities to work on the issues that you're most concerned with and becoming a part of the community. Our meetings are just once a month on the second Monday at 1 o'clock, and we will be having our next meeting on May 13th, and I hope to see a lot of people there. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Roberta Madden. I've put together our service for today with our very special guest. For the chalice lighting, Diane Graham will light the chalice for us. Well, we consider these words from Albert Schweitzer. Diane?
It's already lit.
Oh, you already did? Well, thank you, when I wasn't watching. All right, I'll still read the words from Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. And now we have opening words from two of our very special members, Harry Petrikin and Rochelle Broom. Harry?
Good morning. I congratulate my friends who have the great news of a new child or grandchild. I tell them that this newborn gives them the opportunity to again see the world through the child's eyes, which is really the only valid method of viewing it. As a child discovers the wonderful sights of this beautiful planet, they are imbued with awe and enchantment in their exploration of the natural world. A child is guided by intuitive curiosity in finding what their environment offers and the excitement of each new discovery. Einstein once said that humans should be guided 90% by intuition and 10% by rationality. Unfortunately, as we mature, the reverse takes place. If only we could retain the spirit of the child in which they are so grateful to be alive and united with all the other forms of life that come into their sight. All of the great spiritual leaders and naturalists as well have stated that it is only with the spirit of a child that we at any age can discover our true selves. The modern world has made it re-invoking the childhood spirit all the more difficult, where concrete and asphalt are the most prominent parts of the landscape. And the recent avalanche of electronic communications that pervades all silence, inundating young and old alike, has compounded the difficulty of this reinvocation. We must continue to realize how detrimental are the economic system and societal practices that disrupt the innate relationship of the childhood spirit with the natural world. A spirit which should be cherished throughout our adult life. We have in this part of Appalachia, we can give thanks for all the natural surroundings that we have available and that all facilitate the invocation of the Spirit. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the famed aviator, author, and poet, who along with his colleagues pioneered international airmail routes in the 1930s, wrote a beautiful children's book while awaiting rescue after having crash-landed in the desert. It is entitled The Little Prince and contains some profound thoughts and observations of its main adolescent character. I'll quote just a few that I think encapsulate the spirit of the child. All grown-ups were once children, but only a few of them remember it. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is tiresome for children to be always and forever explaining things to them. Attitude is a paintbrush. It colors everything. Real love begins where nothing is expected in return. I have lived a great deal among grown-ups. I have seen them intimately, and that has not improved my opinion of them. And now, here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye.
So I'd like to speak for a few minutes on equality for women. And let's speak to start with from a global perspective on equality for women. Gender equality is at the very heart of human rights and United Nations values. Gender-based discrimination is prohibited under almost every human rights treaty. Despite much progress made in securing women's rights globally, millions of women and girls continue to experience discrimination and violence, being denied of their equality, dignity, and autonomy, and sometimes even life. The discrimination and violence against women and girls, deeply rooted in the fabric of societies, is persistent and systemic. And in recent years, there's been a recurrence of skepticism against and denial of international standards concerning women's human rights, gender equality, and gender-based violence, while women and girls are increasingly raising voices to demand equality, including through feminist movements. That quote comes from the UN Human Rights Office. Promoting women's human rights and achieving gender equality are core commitments of the UN Human Rights Office. They firmly avow that freedom from violence, sexual and reproductive rights, access to justice, socioeconomic equality, and participation in decision-making are inherent rights of all women. By honoring and supporting the courageous work of women human rights defenders and feminist movements around the world, they continue to amplify those voices and stand behind these most important calls to action. And by continuously shining a light on efforts to victimize, marginalize, and discriminate against women across the globe, this organization challenges the world to continue to fight against the oppression of women. Women and their children are many times the first victims of war. You only need to look to the travesty occurring in Gaza right now to see that disproportionate numbers of women and children are among the casualties. Women human rights defenders and peace builders worldwide have powerfully led efforts to build peace. Yet at the tables of power, where final decisions impacting their lives are made, and in the peace and reconciliation processes, their voices remain marginal at best. So that's coming from the world stage. And in my estimation, we ain't even close to hitting the mark. So let's talk about America. Are we moving forward in a way that's consistent with the Equal Rights Amendment? In 1923, Alice Paul, an American Quaker suffragette, first introduced the ERA to Congress. 20 years later, she rewrote the text, and that language remains to this day. I quote, "Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." March 22nd, 1972, the U.S. Senate passed the Equal Rights Amendment following the lead of the House of Representatives and paving the way for it to become the 28th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The initial momentum of state ratifications indicated that a successful campaign towards adding this new constitutional amendment was in the offing, but the ERA ran into a brick wall of the Mason-Dixon line, fueled by fear-mongering of one Phyllis Schlafly. Her rhetoric and a Congress-imposed deadline for state ratification impeded the movement's ability to get across the goal line. Congress mandated that 38, or 3/4 of the states, had to ratify the proposed amendment by 1979. It later extended this deadline to 1982. However, it took until 2020 to reach that target, when Virginia became the 38th state to ratify the ERA. But it was almost 40 years too late. There are people suing to push the ERA through and those pushing to have it blocked. The Trump Justice Department advised that because the deadline had passed, Congress needed to go back to the drawing board on this issue. In 2021, the House passed a joint resolution to remove the deadline, which President Joe Biden supported. And still, we have no 28th Amendment to the US Constitution on the books. Women in the military, gender-neutral bathrooms, and marriage equality were all boogeymen that Phyllis Schlafly invoked to instill fear and drive people to oppose the ERA. All of these equality initiatives have all come to pass without the Equal Rights Amendment, and our country is better for it. So some might ask, why is an ERA still necessary? According to Jane Mansbridge, professor at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, it's the principle of having it in the Constitution, like other principles that are foundational to what we are as a people. Professor Mansbridge shared this anecdote to illustrate the importance of passage of the ERA. Back when I was a grad student, she says, women were not allowed in the front door of the Harvard faculty club. You had to come to the back door, and you had to be escorted by a man, even if you were a professor. So what does gender equality look like today? In 2021, during the height of the pandemic, a new global analysis of progress on gender equality and women's rights showed that women and girls remain disproportionately affected by the socioeconomic fallout from COVID-19. They struggle with disproportionately high job and livelihood losses, education disruptions, and increased burdens of unpaid care work. Women's health services, poorly funded even before the pandemic, faced major disruptions, undermining women's sexual and reproductive health. And despite women's central role in responding to COVID-19, including as frontline health workers, they are still largely bypassed for leadership positions that they deserve. And then the bellwether decision happened in 2022, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the landmark decision in which the US Supreme Court held that the Constitution of the United States does not confer a right to abortion. They overruled Roe v. Wade, which had been the law of the land for almost 50 years, and returned to the individual states the power to regulate any aspect of abortion not protected by federal statutory law. Not a decision for women to make in consultation with her healthcare provider. A decision made for her by men in power in the state she happens to live in. Decisions made by men who have always believed that a decision made by anyone other than themselves would be inferior. I am a powerful woman. I'm a woman of color, and I'm a gay woman, so I pretty much hit the trifecta in leveraging the strength that my life circumstances have delivered to me. My truth, a deeply held truth in my heart, soul, and mind, is that men in power desire sovereignty only for themselves and others like them. Shared power has never been the plan, so cooperation and solidarity between those who are repressed causes fear to those in power. All of the noise we are now experiencing is designed to divide and distract us so that we can lose focus. We cannot lose focus. We should all be ever mindful that just because those in power might be coming for others right now, doesn't mean that one day they won't be coming for you too. The protections provided by the 13th and 26th Amendments, which abolished slavery and enshrined the right to vote respectively, made our country and all our people stronger. And though we continue to have to fight for these protections to be upheld, they are indelibly documented on the parchment that purportedly guides our actions as a nation. The ERA deserves no less, so that our Constitution also reflects that people who are born women will be afforded equal respect and sovereignty. And may it be so in our lifetime.
Thank you, Ro, and thank you, Harry. And now please join in singing our opening hymn, number 338. This is the time in our program when we express our joys and concerns as members of our extended UU family. So as you wish, please come up, light a candle, or drop a token in the vase. The floor is yours.
Can I share something?
I'd rather not.
Okay.
Thank you. For those of you who did not wish to share your joys and concerns, please know that we hold you in our hearts. And we have one more. This is the time when we ask you to share your generosity. As you know, your contributions to our congregation are put to good use in our community. In the words of Edward Hale, I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. The ushers, please come forward. Thank you, Sue. Is Alice Berry here this morning? Yes. There she is. Okay. And now for our meditation, Alice will read a poem by Marge Piercy called Counsels.
We must sit down and reason together. We must sit down. Men standing want to hold forth, they rain down upon faces lifted. We must sit down on the floor, on the earth, on stones and mats and blankets. There must be no front to the speaking, no platform, no rostrum, no stage or table. We will not crane to see who is speaking. Perhaps we should sit in the dark. In the dark, we could utter our feelings. In the dark, we could propose and describe and suggest. In the dark, we could not see who speaks, and only the words would say what they say. Thus saying what we feel and what we want, what we fear for ourselves and each other. Into the dark, perhaps we could begin to listen. Perhaps we should talk in groups, small enough for everyone to speak. Perhaps we should start by speaking softly. The women must learn to dare to speak. The men must bother to listen. The women must learn to say, I think this is so. The men must learn to stop dancing solos on the ceiling. After each speaks, she or he will repeat the ritual phrase. It is not I who speaks, but the wind. Wind blows through me. Long after me is the wind.
Thank you, Alice. That was beautiful. And I'm honored now to introduce today's speaker, Arlaine Rockey. Arlaine is a nationally known attorney and trial consultant. She represents prospective parents, most often mothers, who are trying to protect their children in the context of custody trials. She's also been advocating for publication of the fully ratified Equal Rights Amendment to the U.S. Constitution as the 28th Amendment. Arlaine has an ERA legal blog on her website, arlainerockey.com, as well as an article about the reasons mothers who make child abuse allegations in custody cases frequently lose their case. Shockingly, mothers whose children have been exposed to domestic violence or have been physically or sexually abused by their fathers frequently lose custody of the children to their abusers. The reasons are complicated, but there is an unmistakable thread of gender bias running through the opinions of professionals who become witnesses against the mother and frequently through decisions of the judges. Nationally, these protective mothers crash into waves of ingrained stereotypes, painting them as lying, scorned, manipulative, and or mentally ill. Ms. Rockey, after handling these cases for over 30 years in her law practice, thinks that only the publication of the ERA, which makes it illegal to discriminate on the basis of sex, can give lawyers the legal tool to strike gender bias out of the family courts, and ultimately to give mothers and abused children a chance to heal in safety and to have future healthy relationships. Arlaine lives in Marshall, North Carolina, and has been a Unitarian Universalist for over 30 years. We're proud to welcome Arlaine Rockey to our pulpit.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me, Robbie. My name is Arlaine. I will tell you that it's spelled a little strangely because my dad's name was Arthur and my mother's name was Elaine. And I was the first child, and she said that was his most creative moment. She was a professional artist, a really amazing artist. They both passed away, but he actually was an inventor, and he actually was the first inventor of the balloon expandable stent that you may have heard of, and he did that in the 1970s. And back when there were typewriters, I actually helped him when I was in high school to send letters out, and everybody said, it can't be made that small. And he always said to me, just wait, in 10 years they'll be able to do it. And he was right. So in any case, that's another long story. But I started, the reason I went to law school was to represent better women. And I'm going to try to, I don't know how much time I have exactly, but my dad pushed me to go to law school, and mostly because he wanted me to be a patent lawyer. And he had, his best friend and cousin was his patent lawyer. And then when I told him I really didn't want to do all the science stuff and all that, you know, just like engineering science degrees or undergrads, I was a writer. And I was planning on and did become an English major at Chapel Hill. And welcome from Chapel Hill. I go there, I have a niece that works at Duke, and I go by there a lot. And I actually stay with her instead of hotels when I'm doing my cases down east. So I love Chapel Hill. It's always a place in my heart, even though I graduated 1984. So it's been a while. But in any case, when I was in law school, I did not even want to take the LSAT. I didn't want to take the course. There's actual courses back then, not online, obviously, to learn how to study for that. And I rebelled, and it was really bad. Like I was just not doing well with my grades, even though I knew I could. But after that, I said, well, I'm not going to apply for law schools. That didn't go over too well. And I went to England and got a BNAC education permit to work. And while I was there, I was living in a little teeny bedsit, which was like, it's the size of, take this little part here, that's about how big it was. And it had a window though, that was good. But while I was there, I did a lot of reading. And there were two books that really inspired me to go forward to be a lawyer. And one of them was In Search of Our Mother's Gardens by Alice Walker, which is a book of essays. I would highly recommend it. And the other was by Gloria Steinem, Outrageous Acts and Everyday Rebellions, which I also highly recommend. Those two books changed my life. And so when I got back from England, I went to sit down with my dad in his study, and I said, Dad, guess what? I want to go to law school. And I thought, I just was like, I just felt chills coming over me, because I remember that. I'm like very visual. And I said, but I don't want to go to be a patent lawyer. And he's like, well, you can do copyright law. And I said, no, I want to go represent battered women. And I don't even know if he knew what battered women were. But he was like, okay. So he was all happy. So I went to law school, and I went to the University of Miami in Coral Gables. And when I went to look at that school, I was visiting schools, and I was down there, a friend of mine had gone, and I went and talked to a woman who was in the women's, they called it the women's ghetto, because most of the lower level writing instructors and things like that were not, there weren't a whole lot of women professors back then. And I said, this is what I want to do. And she goes, well, we don't have much going on with feminism and women's rights right now here. She said, but you can look at it two ways. One you can look at is there's not much going on here, and the other one is there's a lot to be done. And so I decided to go there, and I ended up being president of the Women's Law Students Association for my second and third year. And I ended up getting my first job representing children at Legal Services of Greater Miami. And Legal Services, you might have heard of Legal Aid. Those are nonprofit law firms where they don't charge the clients money. They're funded by grants and donations. And it was a very good program. It had a great reputation, and I actually got in through the back door. And I was very happy. They sort of made a temporary job for me, and then they turned me into permanent. So anyway, my dad had passed away while I was in law school, and my mom was in Charlotte. I grew up in Charlotte. And I decided that after doing that for a couple of years and a couple of riots where like someone called me and said, Arlaine, you better get out of the office, because it was downtown. And she goes, and don't take 95, go by the beach, because they're throwing bottle rockets up on the highway. And I'm like, maybe it's time to leave. So I moved back to Charlotte and had to take another bar exam. And while I was taking the bar exam, I found out that marital rape was still legal in North Carolina. And that was in 1990 and 1991. And marital rape is part, I'm talking a lot. I'm going to try to get onto exactly what I'm supposed to be talking about, but I just want to let you know. The United States was based on the common law. And under the common law of England, women who were married did not legally exist. And so the theory behind the marital rape law is that when you get married, the two people become one person, and the one person they become is the man, and the woman ceases to have any legal rights. And that's what our country was like back in 1848 when Elizabeth Cady Stanton, my hero, had the first women's convention in Seneca Falls. And so that was a vestige of the common law. And it was a hard, I started an organization to change it, and it took 18 months roughly, and it was finally taken away on July 3rd of 1993. And that was the biggest thing I'd ever done at that point in my life. And so now I'm working to top it, because I've been working for the last 4 years on the Equal Rights Amendment, and I was asked to represent 86 groups and amici, friends of the court, in one of the 2 federal lawsuits that was challenging the Trump's administration's action of blocking the ERA from being published. So the ERA was fully ratified on January 27th, 2020. The last state was Virginia. And the Constitution in Article 5 says as soon as 3/4 of the states ratify, it shall become an amendment. And there's this thing about what happens after it becomes an amendment. So there's a law, and it says that it is a mandatory duty, non-discretionary, that the archivist shall publish forthwith, which means immediately, the amendment as soon as they find out that it had been ratified by 3/4 of the states. And because of the 7-year deadline, which was not in the actual text of the Equal Rights Amendment, which is very important, and I'll tell you that in a second, why, but they had an Office of Legal Counsel, a lawyer, do a legal opinion. This is Bill Barr. We know who he is, right? And he had the Office of Legal Counsel, and this is the guy who actually did the torture memo. I don't remember his name. I kind of block people to do that. What?
John Yu.
Okay. Yeah. So he was the Office of Legal, the head of the Office of Legal Counsel, and they did an opinion which is supposed to guide the administrative branch, but they're not court orders. Okay. And recently, in one of the cases that's going on recently, you might have seen this in the paper, one of the women judges said to the 2 DOJ, Department of Justice lawyers, he refused to come forward to Congress under subpoenas, and they said, well, we're basing our actions to not go on an Office of Legal Counsel memo, and that judge said, well, last time I checked, that's not a court order. And I was so excited to hear that, because I knew it was true, but now I can quote that judge. But in any case, because they made that decision, even though there were 3 states, Nevada, Illinois, and Virginia, who had ratified after the 7-year deadline, they would not publish it, okay? And now it is still not published. And that's all that has to happen. Based on Supreme Court precedent of like 100 years ago, once an amendment is ratified by the 3/4 of the states, it is legally the amendment, okay? It's supposed to be able to be enforced. Now the ERA in it does have a deadline in the actual text of the amendment. There's 3 sections. And section 3 says that it shall become legally effective 2 years after the date of ratification. And that was January 27th, 2022, which was right before Dobbs came out. And so I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about kids in a minute, but I'm doing this backwards. I was going to go into all this after, but since we already talked so forcefully about the Equal Rights Amendment, I figured I better get that part in first. But the thing is that the lawyers who were representing the clinic, Jackson Women's Health Organization, they did not argue the ERA. They had nothing about it, and there were tons and tons of amicus briefs. None of them mentioned the ERA. And the ERA says what she said it says, which is you can't discriminate, the state or the federal government cannot discriminate on any against anyone on the basis of sex. So, on May 2nd of that year, we got the leaked opinion. Anybody remember that day that it came out and it said we're overturning Roe? It was Alito's opinion. And that to me was devastating. But before that, I had been working with a group of women's rights lawyers and lay people, including the organization that Robbie founded, which is the ERA NC Alliance. And so I would recommend that highly. It's an amazing group. I had been working on that one federal case, and another aside, the two federal cases, one was brought by the 3 states and one was brought by women. And Equal Means Equal, which is the most amazing, strongest ERA organization nationally, Equal Means Equal. And there's a film that Kamala Lopez, who is the director and the founder of it, did that helped them get the last 3 states. It's called Equal Means Equal. It's on Prime for free if you've got Prime. I would suggest you watch it. It's really fabulous. But it talks about why we need the ERA. And they used it to go to the different states that had not ratified to get the last 3 states. And the thing is that because the 7-year deadline was not in the text of the amendment, and how many people here know what a resolution is? Like organizations do resolutions, we hear it be hereby resolved, blah, 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 and that wherefore, this is what we're resolving to say. This is what we're agreeing to, okay? It's a page, and the top part is the be it resolved stuff, and then the bottom is the actual text of the amendment when Congress is doing an amendment. And it was not in the text. And Congress does not really have the right to put any kind of curtail those rights of the states unless it's given to them by the Constitution. And it doesn't say anywhere in Article 5 of the Constitution that Congress can set a deadline. But Congress can put what's in the text. So when they put the 2-year, time lag so that states could get their act together and the federal government could get their act together before they started getting sued, that was the reason for the 2-year lapse before it was valid. That is effective because it's something Congress had the right to do. But we have federalism, which means we have a federal government, national government, and then we have state governments. And they're supposed to share power under making new amendments. So Congress proposes it, 38 states now, 3/4 of the states, have to ratify it. And ratifying is a one-way street. It's kind of like a contract theory. If you have if someone does a contract for you, like a lawyer or somebody, you have to ratify it, you sign it, okay? You can't take your signature off that. Once it's on, it's done. It's a one-way street, ratification. So there was no right for Congress to even put in the 7-year deadline. It is unconstitutional. When things are unconstitutional, they're void ab initio, which means from the beginning. So it is like it never occurred. It's null and void. It does not exist legally. So the ERA was fully ratified, and that OLC opinion is in error, okay? And so we knew Trump wasn't going to publish it. There's never been an amendment that's taken 4 years to get ratified. Everything is ratified. The 27th Amendment took 203 years. Okay, and that was on congressional pay raises that they had to agree to it like the year before an election. They couldn't do it in an election year or something like that. I don't know. I can only keep so much in my head. But so anyway, what happened is that once I heard the oral arguments in Dobbs, and it happened on December 1st of 2021, which was right before, almost 2 months before, the ERA became legally effective. Okay. But yet nobody mentioned it. And they all knew that the case wasn't going to come out until probably summer, right? So they should have said something about it. And none of them said anything. So I started writing to the lawyers for Jackson, okay? And that's the Center for Reproductive Rights. And the attorney who argued the case is Julie Reichelman. And none of them would write me back. I faxed them, I emailed them, I ended up finally emailing everyone on the board, their executive director. I'm like, you've got to argue the ERA. This is the thing. And the thing is that after all arguments, if nobody mentioned it in their briefs, the only party could file something to alert the court to new law, which it was new authority, new law. And they wouldn't do it. Okay. So then May 2nd comes around, and we found out that Alito wrote in there that the reason that they were overruling Dobbs was because there was no text or anything, even by implication, which would have provided a woman's right to reproductive choice. Okay? And that was not true, because the ERA legally became effective on the January 27th, 2022, because it was ratified on January 27th, 2020. And the minute it's ratified, it's actually an amendment. So then you just go down to the 2-year time ladder. So I was trying to get emails for the White House counsel. It's like a big secret, like how do you get through to people? I would call, and I finally talked to some nice guy who told me an email of one of Vice President Harris's attorneys, and then her name was spelled strangely, and I didn't write it down right, so I didn't have it. And then you really can't even get through on the phone to anybody. That was like a fluke that I got through to this guy. So I finally, so I didn't have their emails, I couldn't write to them. So my sister, who's also a lawyer, her name is Gina Calias. She lives in Kings Mountain, and she lived up in Asheville in Fairview for her son's high school years, and they still have that house here. You might have heard of her. She ran for Congress twice up here. And she and I have been working on the ERA together, and with a whole group of other people on the National ERA Publication Task Force, which we meet every week by Zoom, and we've been working on this, trying to get it published for all this time. And two of the lawyers had actually spoken to the prior White House counsel. And I don't know why, but it was like such a secret that what the emails were. Like I couldn't get an email, and I couldn't get an appointment, I couldn't get through to anybody. So we decided to file a motion for leave to file a brief on the ERA for ERA NC Alliance, okay? This happened like really fast. They had to do like a meeting and agree to have us do this for them. So we filed this thing, but it got filed on their docket, and it explained why Alito's opinion was an error, because you have to look at the whole Constitution, and it legally includes the Equal Rights Amendment. And also, I argued, and I believe I'm accurate on this, is that it also provides a fundamental right, by implication, to reproductive choice, because of all the things people said in their briefs, which was women, there were all these statistics and everything. There was a brief of economists, and they all talked about how it's impossible for women to be equal in society unless they have the right to control their reproduction. Otherwise, you're at home birthing babies, taking care of them, and that's where they're putting us back to, and now we can see it because it's happening. And so we filed that, and copies went officially to the Solicitor General, General Prelogar, and also went to the Center for Reproductive Rights, and they still didn't do anything. And just blows my mind. So that thing sat on the docket, and the clerk refused to accept it for filing. So it just sat on the docket until Dobbs came out, and then they took it off the docket, but the link still works, and it's on my legal blog if you want to read the motion. In fact, on my legal blog, I just did another post I post like every 3 months, it's not a lot, but I just did another one, but the January 28th post has all the legal proof with it and linked to it. And the reason it does is because I sent another letter. I first sent a letter when I got the emails. I sent a letter on June 17th, 1 week before Dobbs came out, to the White House counsel, tons of head people in the administration, to that one lawyer from the vice president, and then the head lawyer for the vice president. I sent it to, I mean, just all the top people. There were like 7 or whatever. That letter is linked on that blog, okay? And then I told them, the president has a constitutional duty under Article 2, Section 3, that says that the president has to take care to faithfully enforce all the laws. Well, we have a law. The law is 1 U.S. Code 106B, and that says that the archivist shall publish the amendments immediately. And so I told them that. I also sent a draft executive order because I figured there's not a lot of time here. And I sent all the law to them on June 17th, 2022. And I do not believe that it's possible that they got this. Somebody of that group of people had to have gotten that email, and somebody had to have read it. And I really feel that Harris and Biden knew before Dobbs was out that Biden could have saved us and saved Roe. And he refused to do it. And then lo and behold, after that came the midterms, and he started using Dobbs as a vote getter in the midterms. And I'm a lifelong Democrat. This is very disconcerting to me. And even though I'm even more disconcerted, I'm still going to vote for him because look at the alternative, 2025 project. So anyway, he didn't do it. And if you read the blog post from January 28th, it is my letter that I wrote to them on January 23rd of this year. And I said all the reasons that I could think of as to why he needed to do this. By that time, he was using women, including a gynecologist who had to go out of state to get treatment. He's been using all these people, and the vice president, been using all these people to try to get votes and money. And it's hypocritical, to say the least. It's disconcerting. And so I went ahead, when they didn't answer, nobody answers, and I sent it to the new White House counsel, the old White House counsel that I'd done before, the chief of staff, Jennifer O'Malley Dillon, who I'd sent before. She's now the campaign chair. And I'm pretty sure she got it because it was right before she moved off of there to get into the campaign. And so they've known this. And they're choosing not to help us. Biden is out there saying, oh, it's Trump's fault. Trump did this. Y'all seen these ads? Trump did this? Trump did not do it. Trump lies. We should know that. He'd like to take credit for it, but unfortunately he can't because it's Biden's fault. Biden had the last clear chance to stop the Supreme Court from overturning Roe. And the proof is in my blog. And I don't see how they wouldn't know that. We've had, and other lawyers have talked to them that are in our group, and they know. And he's let it go and let it go and let it go. And it's horrible. It's unconscionable, in my opinion. He has a constitutional duty to take care to enforce the laws. So all he has to do really is pick up the phone and call the archivist and say, follow this law. But instead, he's been deflecting and talking about Congress having to do something. Most people don't know this. Congress does not have a dog in this fight right now, except to tell Biden what to do. But they don't have to do anything. You don't have to remove the deadline because it does not exist. They don't have to do anything, and they don't even have a constitutional basis to do anything at this point. Their job was done back in the 70s when they sent it out to the states. The archivist, there's a new archivist, it's our first woman archivist, and she got grilled in her hearing about what are you going to do about, abortion, blah, 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 the ERA. And she basically has been intimidated, I think, and will not do it, but she said she would do it if the president told her to do it. So he won't do it. And we have been trying so hard with Equal Means Equal in our group to get him to publish the ERA. And we are coming, it is so bad right now that Equal Means Equal is doing a new campaign. It's called Final Impact for the ERA, and it's got celebrities and artists and all this stuff, and they're kicking off a big gala in New York City at the Focused Art Fair, which is like something that goes internationally, trying to get people to talk about this. The ERA Coalition is finally talking about it, and that has a lot of ERA groups with them, but it has been really hard. Even the Women's March has refused. We've been telling them for years, the ERA can fix this. They would not listen to us, or they chose not to. And we now know people are going around getting state ERAs. Y'all know that, right? They're going to get their own state ERAs. In North Carolina, we're not allowed to, as people, as citizens, we're not allowed to put up an amendment to our state constitution, but some states can. So now it's not really a question of whether the ERA can stop it, or can stop what this post-dogs handmaid's hell, that's what I call it. So anyway, I just want y'all to please do whatever you can to let people know that Biden can fix this with one phone call, and he can follow it up with an executive order. I've updated it, it's on my blog. And I sent one that's very similar to that to them in January. And he just doesn't want to do it. And it just is so heart-wrenching. But honestly, we need him to do this before the convention. Because I want him to win, because I don't want 2025 project being what runs our government. And some people are saying, well, don't vote for him. Tell him you're not going to vote, or women aren't going to vote for him. I don't think we have that luxury. I don't think that's the thing. What I keep trying to tell him is that if he actually published the ERA, it would be the second most historic executive order in our country's history. The first one was Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. This is an equality proclamation. And the ERA not only saves contraception, there are things they're still going after. I mean, they're not done, right? Contraception, it also saves LGBT rights. And so marriage equality is also on the chopping block because of the way they wrote Dobbs. But under the ERA, it will cover LGBT people as well. So this is so, so important, and it's so difficult to get the word out. I'm going to go back to the children. I just want to say one other thing is that I am on social media, and one of my things is ERA4, number 4, repro rights, and I'm on lots of things with that. But we need help, and there's the organization equalmeansequal.org. You can join them. You can go and repost things that they do. And please, if you have any ability to tell anybody who can get to the ear of the president and get him to realize that if you look at the statistics of who supports the ERA, how many people support the ERA, it's like 80%. How many people support marriage equality for gay people? It's really high, it's like 70-something%. If he did this, one of the things my sister and I did, we did an article when it came out at eWomen's News, and I republished it in my blog. But gratitude, in my opinion, is stronger than fear. He's coming after women because they're afraid. Okay? He's using us because we're afraid. That is not the strongest emotion. Gratitude, maybe I have too much faith in the world, but I think gratitude would get him more votes, and it will get him over the hump, so he really will be Trump. He could get, I think he could easily get 55% of the popular vote. And there is on the second anniversary of Dobbs, which is coming up on June 24th, you may or may not have heard of this, but there's a women's strike that's going to happen on some Monday, the 24th of June. And we're trying to get the word out to them to say, demand Biden publish the ERA. One phone call. The hashtag for the new campaign from Equal Means Equal is make the call, Joe. That's what it is, make the call, Joe. Just pick up the phone. So, now, back to the children's issue. I went to Legal Services of Southern Piedmont next, and when it came to Charlotte, And I ended up being the family law team leader. And we had 3 offices, and we represented a lot of people in different counties. You know, y'all help Pisgah Legal Services here, and they have counties all through the southern part of the mountains. And so they also do these kind of cases of representing mothers in domestic violence protection orders, and also parents that are trying to protect their kids from child abuse. And so there are very few groups that'll do that. They do it for free, and I think the cutoff is 150% of the poverty line. There's also an amazing organization which needs to be replicated all over this country, and it is called New Direction Mustard Seed. And it's run out by David and Bridget Walls, and they actually, it's a nonprofit, and they actually help mothers pay for their attorney's fees. They help pay for expert witnesses. They even help mothers be on their feet. Okay, they help them with economical issues, trying to like learn how to do their budgeting and everything, and actually help them if they need help during that time period. So what happens is, the reason why it's gender bias is because if you think about the old tropes of what people think about women, they're liars, they're vindictive, one judge in Buncombe said, I don't ever trust what a mother testifies to, because they're going to say anything to protect their kids or to get their kids or whatever. Okay? But what happens is there is a thing called parental alienation, and it came from a really bad place. And parental alienation can happen, and that means like turning a child against the other parent. So what happens is the go-to defense for any time there is a case where a mother alleges that the father abused the kids, they come back with the defense of, oh, she's just made this up. She's coaching them, like telling them what to say, and all this stuff. And when there's a custody case going on, in which there usually is a custody case when that happens, because they've got to do something, they can file a protection order, and then they don't have to file for custody, because protection orders only give you custody for a temporary time. DSS, there's mandatory reporters. Everybody's a mandatory reporter. If you think abuse or neglect is going on, you're supposed to call DSS. Well, DSS is very skeptical of mothers who are involved in custody cases. And even though there is I've done these cases for 35 years. I know how to figure out whether this is true or not, how to prove it. It's very difficult to prove, but the worst part is that the mothers are not believed. And they have a higher burden of proof, which is not even fair under the law. And they've got psychologists involved, they've got guardians ad litem who often are not even family law lawyers involved. There's just a lot of players in these cases, and what happens is women end up losing custody over 50% of the time when they allege sexual abuse. Some say as high as 70% of the time. And often they will not even have contact with their kids. I've got cases where mothers have not, protected mothers trying to protect their kids, real cases, have not had contact with their kids for years. And they have to wait for a time and come back and try, and we have to work it up. And the reason why I'm trying to do consultation now, besides that I'm trying to not have to travel so much, because I've been practicing nationally for over 20 years. And, but I'm trying to get to the point where I can help more lawyers learn how to do these cases. I'm trying to inspire young people or young lawyers to take these cases on. It is hard work. It's emotionally draining, but it is so important because, Harry, you read the part about, children are supposed to be innocent. Children are supposed to have, a beautiful outlook on life. And you may have heard of the ACEs study. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with that. It affects them for the rest of their life, including trust issues. And especially when the dad gets custody and starts telling the children that your mother lied about all this. Okay? It didn't really happen to you. Well, when we have video of a child in a hospital who is having seizures and all kinds of psychosomatic problems, and she had disclosed that she was being sexually abused by her dad, I mean, you can't make that up, okay? That, you can't make it up. Even when pediatricians are the ones who call into DSS, if there's a custody case, they'll do any, it's almost like they don't even want to take the time. And then they're really good witnesses for the dad. If they unfounded, unsubstantiated, they make really good witnesses for the dad. And so the woman, the mother, ends up needing somebody who can tell them how to play the game. I hate to say play the game, but it's like a chess game. Anything they say can and will be used against them. I have an article on my website on the first page, and it's called Protecting Your Child from Sexual Abuse. It also applies to physical abuse and domestic violence. So if you want to read more about that, it's in there. There's also, I told you PISCA, Legal Services, will do these cases. And also there's a place called One Mom's Battle, which is a Facebook group. There are protective parent associations, protective, like protect parents. California Protective Parent Association has been around for a while. Their website has some really good information. New Direction Mustard Seed is .com. They have a lot of great information. And honestly, they need donations badly because they're like two angels. I mean, I gave Catholicism up for Lent when I was 16. Okay? So when I say they're angels, I mean, it's a, I have a different opinion of what angels are. Some are my, relatives and my best friends who have died that look after me. But, these people are angels. And they are helping so many people, but they need help to help other people. And these programs need to be replicated throughout the country. It's an amazing program, but you really ought to look at their website if you're interested in what they're doing. And then, this does not just happen in the United States. It happens all over this country. It's the same patterns. And that's how I ended up practicing nationally, because I wrote the article on the first page back 20-something years ago, and it was because I was tired of repeating myself. Honestly, I just put it out there and gave advice. It was just free legal advice to people. But it happens all over. It's happening in the UK, Canada, Australia. I got a call from Cyprus. I mean, it's just everywhere. And it's gender bias. If you look at all these different cases, there's no other thing to say that it is, because it's all happening in the same patterns. And the underlying thing is, everybody assumes that when you say the woman lied, or the woman, the mother lied, the mother is vindictive, she, blah, 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 people believe it. They believe it because it's so ingrained. And one other thing is, if you know anyone who is in this case, these kind of cases, they need to go ahead and start arguing the ERA in their trial case. Because when you go on appeal to the next higher court, you can't argue something you didn't argue at the trial level. So you have to start bringing up gender bias and bringing up the Equal Rights Amendment, because it is legally the law, right? And then it could go in the appellate case. But there's also a thing called the Women's Coalition at Substack. It's not it's just Women's Coalition at Substack, and it's international. And that's just like a thing you can get in your emails if you want something else coming in your emails, or you can just look it up. But they have a lot of information on there as well. I just would really hope that you guys will try to work on the ERA. It is so important. Tell people, and if they don't believe it, tell them to look at my blog, because I've got the proof on there. Thank you.
We are running a little bit late, so I'm going to skip the next hymn and just ask Sue Stone to please us with I Am Woman. You know that wonderful song? All right. Thank you.